Hey everybody, Michael Snyder here, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is September 29th, and right now we are looking at the mid-level water vapor loop. Here we are with BC, Washington, Oregon, Idaho. You can see the upper level low spinning across eastern Washington, Idaho Panhandle, and western Montana here, bringing some beneficial rain out to the area here. Then in the wake of this system, you can see this ridge is going to build across Pacific Northwest and warm us up through the weekend here on in through next week, potentially. We'll check the extended forecast to see if we have any systems coming down the pipe. Now, taking a look at things here, you can see this beneficial rain out here. But like it says, fires and cascades will get very little, if any, rain with this system. That's unfortunate. And then you can see the warm-up happening through Saturday through Wednesday here. Light winds, highs all the way up to the lower 80s here coming up. Look at Missoula, Montana. Nice rainy day today. They can use the rainfall out there, as most places in the Pacific Northwest. Nice graphic here from Missoula, Montana National Weather Service. This is Seattle. 3/100 of an inch yesterday is all we could squeeze out of that system here. Got the exact same amount at my house, so I know my rain gauge looks like it's doing well calibration-wise. And we're probably going to end up with that just 1/4 of an inch here for September. Our average, again, 1.61 for the month, so well below average, which is the case for much of the Pacific Northwest. Look at Astoria, though. Did get 0.68 inches of rain, just over 2/3 of an inch. But still, they were only at 5/100 of an inch before that, still well below the average of 2.67 for September here. This is for Eugene, did get 11/100 of an inch down there, and that is just to the west of the Bolt Creek fire. So I'm hoping maybe the Bolt Creek got a little bit more. Probably didn't put out the fire by any means, but anything helps at this point. You can see Eugene very dry, only had 2/100 of an inch before that rainfall yesterday, well below the average of 1.39 for this time of the month, September. Now, taking a look here, I just wanted to show you guys this. As we go through into Saturday morning, you'll notice we get this offshore flow again. So we will start to introduce any kind of forest fire activity across the Cascades, BC, on into western Washington, Oregon, southern mainland here for British Columbia. And you can see the easterly component across eastern Washington, Oregon as well. This goes on through Sunday at least here also. We'll continue to watch this also coming up here. But yeah, we're probably going to start to degrade our air quality here across western portions here across the metro areas coming up this weekend, that with the return of this warmth. Now, taking a look here, this is Northern Hemisphere. There's Alaska, BC, Washington, Oregon. There's Hawaii here, Pacific Ocean. There's Japan out here. Here's Russia, Siberia, and here's the North Pole there. Now, this is the European, the deterministic yesterday afternoon. So you can see the system, the upper level low that moved through Oregon yesterday. Now, here goes the ridge. It's going to warm us up here for a couple days at least, probably a few days. And you can see this cutoff low out here, or the big troughing out of the Pacific Ocean, helping to amplify the ridge, keeping us warm. Then perhaps another ridge building over the area. But then watch as we go through the extended here, as you can see this polar lobe kind of swing down towards British Columbia here at the very end of this European run. Look at this big ridging here near the Aleutians. Helps to drive this northwest flow and maybe start to bring a trough in through the extended. It's something worth watching at this point. And it's really all we have for now. So we have several days of warm weather coming up here, and we're looking for anything at this point. Now let's take a look at some of the other runs here. This is the European ensemble mean. So this is just the average of all 50 ensemble runs yesterday afternoon. There goes that low pressure system. Low comes down, gets cut off over the Pacific Ocean here. Ridge amplified over the region here, keeping us pretty warm across Pacific Northwest. Ridge continues to exist. Here goes this polar lobe that the deterministic run had swinging down at trough, and the ridging out here over the Aleutians. So there is some confidence in this solution here. But as you look at the ensemble mean, this is just an average of all the runs here. So it kind of gets smoothed out and doesn't really show any meaningful outlook into the future here. But we can kind of hope that at least maybe some troughing exists here as we go on in through mid-October. Now, taking a look at the control run of the ensembles, here we go. Here, there's the upper level low. Trough gets cut off here across ridge, amplifies across Pacific Northwest. Good agreement there. Now watch, we get a little bit of redevelopment of the ridge, but then you can see the polar lobe swing down this trough over British Columbia into the Pacific Northwest. Look at this pretty dynamic trough here. But the big play here is this ridging over the Aleutian Islands, which has been showing up in the ensembles, the deterministic, and now the control, as you can see here. So maybe there is something to this. This is something we'll watch. This is still, 8, 9, 10 days out. So we're just going to have to watch it at this point. But you can see it would be a pretty big pattern change with the trough much more open over the Pacific Northwest. We'll continue to watch that at this point. Now watching here, here's the deterministic on the left for the European and the GFS on the right. This is yesterday afternoon, so there goes the upper level low. Ridge builds, very high confidence in the warmth coming up here for the next few days. You can see this troughing out over the Pacific Ocean here, helping to amplify this ridge on both the European and the GFS. This is going out 135 hours now. And you can see the redevelopment of the ridge. Looks like both models are in pretty good agreement there. Then you can see at the end of the run here for the European starts to open up this trough, big ridging over the Aleutians. You can see that GFS has the same ridging here, but it's much further east over the Gulf of Alaska here. Which model do you like better in this scenario? We are showing some signs for some ridging. Some are out over either the Aleutians or the Gulf of Alaska here, obviously. And this one would leave us much warmer here across Pacific Northwest. Obviously, this trough digging down off the coastline here of the Pacific Northwest would bring much more dynamic systems here in precipitation. So which model will win out? Will both models change? Will they change together? We'll have to watch that over the next few days. Now, taking a look at 850 millibar temperatures here, you'll see people posting on Twitter that we're going to be experiencing heat and summertime temperatures. That's not really accurate. You got to be careful with this. Just because you're looking at warm air aloft here, for example, at 850 millibars doesn't always translate to very warm surface temperatures, especially once you get into October. In fact, you can start to get inversions and whatnot at this point as well. But we should have above average temperatures, but you really don't get heat waves here in the Pacific Northwest as you get into October. The overnight lows just don't allow it. You spend only an hour or two at your maximum temperature, and things start to quickly cool off in the afternoon and the evening. As you've been noticing, you wake up in the morning and it's downright chilly. You're down into the 50s. So we're not dealing with heat-related conditions. Any kind of fear-mongering, I almost want to call it here, in the extended forecast for heat waves across Pacific Northwest is just not true. There's no heat-related concerns with this ridging coming up here. We're just looking at warm afternoons that quickly turn into, kind of almost chilly overnight lows for most areas. So there's the 850 millibar temperatures, which are above average here as we go through the extended forecast. Now, if you look at the surface, it's a little bit different here. You see they get warm, but not quite as warm. It's not quite the contrast you would expect here. But as you get into October, again, you just don't get that surface heating as much as you would during the summertime. And you can see the Puget Sound here down towards western Washington, Oregon, even the Oregon-Washington coast here pretty much, are not that much above average here as we go. And again, this is 2-meter temperature anomaly here going through the extended forecast here on the European. Now, looking at 24-hour 2-meter min temperature, you can kind of see this reflected here. As we go through the extended, you don't see any really warm overnight lows. We're not looking at heat-related events here coming up here. We're not going to be having any heat advisories or anything of that nature. You're just looking at warm afternoon temperatures. So any kind of, chatter about heat waves across Pacific Northwest is just not really accurate. Now, looking at Spokane International Airport, check out these overnight lows. Even on these warm days, you're getting down all the way to the upper 40s. That's plenty of time to cool off. You're not spending much time here at the 78-degree mark, maybe an hour or two tops. Then you quickly cool down to the afternoon. And, you're looking at almost 25, 30-degree swings here between your overnight lows and your daily highs. Now, looking at Klamath Falls Regional Airport, look at this. You're well down into the 40s. Even though you're getting towards 80, this is just not a heat wave. You're cooling down plenty at night. In fact, you're probably closing your house up overnight once you get down towards these temperatures. Same thing for Seattle here, cooling off nicely into the 50s. Potential for an 80-degree day does exist. Maybe here on Sunday we'll get close to it. But again, this is not a heat wave. We don't get heat waves here in the Pacific Northwest in October. So this is Kamloops, nice warm afternoon highs, but you can see definitely dropping back down to chilly overnight lows here. But we are definitely postponing precipitation across the region. It has been very dry across Pacific Northwest, and these warm temperatures, at least over in the afternoon highs, are going to continue here for probably at least the next several days. Brookings, Oregon here, check this out. A little bit of a warm up here as we go on through Friday. Then a bit of a cool down here as we go through midweek. But you can see here maybe a bounce back later, and everybody knows along the Oregon, southwest Oregon coast what this means would be an offshore flow pattern here. The compression winds that would come off the coastline down there, southwest Oregon, and warm things up nicely. We'll continue to show this in the next few days to see if the models are onto something here as we go on in through next week. Seattle, Tacoma, really not any more precipitation expected, so you can kind of cancel this one out here. But you can see through the extended, maybe some troughing well off in through, later into October 8th period on in through mid-October. Maybe we'll start to get some troughing and change this pattern up. But right now, we're just in the initial stages of watching the European kind of drop that big trough down over the Pacific Northwest. So there's quite low confidence in that solution as of now. Tillamook Airport here, you can see maybe we'll get that troughing here. It's kind of hinting at that signal well off into October 9th and 10th, off into mid-October. Now, taking a look here at Ian, it's come back off the east shore of the Florida coastline here. This is supposed to redevelop here and become a hurricane again as it moves towards the South Carolina coast. There are hurricane warnings up for the South Carolina coast. Again, some of the big threats from this are going to be very heavy rainfall, possible flooding, and it's going to get very windy here along the Carolinas. You can see that here they do have the hurricane warnings here for South Carolina coast, and it does bulk that system back up to a hurricane, but it talks about danger of life-threatening storm surge, high winds, hurricane force winds here, and major to record river flooding will continue across portions of central Florida as the system is still kind of moving offshore here. Now, taking a look a little bit closer, you can see where Ian is now just coming off the shoreline. And so this water is warm out here, as you can see here. So this system is going to redevelop quite quickly here into a hurricane once again before it impacts the South Carolina coast. Should be a tropical storm as it moves inland here, but hopefully this thing doesn't just stall over one area and bring some nasty flooding here across North Carolina or South Carolina there. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to get a nice spell of warm weather here across the Pacific Northwest. Again, as you wake up in the mornings, you go outside, you feel those overnight lows cooling down quite nicely here. We're not dealing with any heat-related conditions from these ridges here at this time of year. It just doesn't happen here in the Pacific Northwest, at least not yet anyway. But again, enjoy these nice days. You might as well make the most of it here because we all know what's coming here as we get through later October on into November and December. We're going to be wishing for some of these nice warm days, and this weekend should be really nice across the Pacific Northwest. That kind of hinges on just how much smoke we bring back into Western Washington, Western Oregon, though. As you saw, those easterly offshore winds, we may deteriorate the air quality here across British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon as we go. So hopefully that's not the case. Maybe these fires are starting to get under control a little bit more. We're getting overnight. These overnight temperatures we are dealing with are cooling things down. The high humidities help start to squelch these fires a little bit, but we're just not getting the rainfall really to put out the Bolt Creek fire, the Cedar Creek fire altogether, and some of these other fires around the region here. We really could use a soaking precip here, and maybe we'll get that in the 10 to 15 day range, but right now that's still a low confidence as we talked about here. So we'll continue to watch that off through the extended forecast. And again, enjoy these warm temperatures coming up. Hopefully the smoke doesn't get too bad. We'll do this again tomorrow. I kind of like this point of the forecast when you start to see something like a big trough developing for the region here, and you get to kind of watch it day by day and see which model starts to win. And right now the GFS and the Euro have big disagreements here through the extended forecast. So anyway, we'll do this again tomorrow. We'll check things out, and I'll talk to you guys then.